So, I want to start off by thanking you for having me. I know a lot of guys come in here and might help you out with some wines that are on your list, but this is a little different. As Justin said, I'm Cameron Spencer. I am the district sales manager for Justin and Landmark Wineries. Although that's not what I'm doing today. I'm here to present to you a little bit about the Mosel Valley in Germany, which is one of my favorite wine regions. Produces some of the best white wines in the world. I'm doing this, as he mentioned, as part of my Certified Wine Educator exam, which is from the Society of Wine Educators. Presentation is going to take about 15 to 20 minutes, including a tasting of 3 wines, as I just mentioned. And we are video recording the presentation as well. So I'll just ask that, for that sake, if you would hold any questions you have until the end of the presentation, so we can keep it continuous. All right. So to start off, here, please join us. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. Who here would consider yourself a fan of Mosel wines or German wines in general? All right, that was kind of what I guessed, about half the room, maybe a little less. They're a little underrepresented in today's market, right? Now, secondly, I was going to ask, as wine professionals, what do you guys think of when you think of the best white wines in the world? Does anybody kind of, yeah, what do you think?
I think of Mosel. I think
Okay, great. I love it. Yeah, I agree with you.
that's one of the first things I think of. I think of Northern Italy.
Northern Italy? Okay, great.
Burgundy.
Burgundy, right. That's kind of what I was fishing for, right? When we think of certainly the most expensive white wines in the world, the wines of white Burgundy kind of stand out, and specifically wines from places like Montrachet. Have you guys heard of that vineyard? Yeah. Okay, great. So I wanted to start out with that, and with this, which is an excerpt from a wine list in a New York City restaurant at the turn of the 20th century. Okay. Now you're kind of far away, and it's kind of hard to see. So I'll explain a little bit about it. The first thing I noticed is how well represented German wines are on this list. There's about twice as many German wines from both the Rhine and the Mosel as there are from Burgundy. Okay. And the second thing, which you'll almost certainly be unable to see from that distance, is the prices. Okay, so I'll read off a couple. Montrachet is going for $4 a quart at this restaurant, which is quite the bargain. La Tâche, $5 a quart. Chambertin, $4 a quart. What's really amazing is that wines from the Mosel are equal to that price and sometimes even higher. Okay? So even though we sometimes think of German wines as being a little bit obscure and not that popular these days, there's a time when these were among the most highly prized and highly priced wines in the world. Why is that? It's the same reason that I love German wines today, and many of you do as well. Okay? Intensity of flavor, balance and harmony in the wines, a sense of place or terroir, and the ability to age very gracefully, in some cases up to decades. So I've got a couple of learning objectives for this presentation. I want you all to be able to walk away with these abilities, to understand the geography and the structure of the Mosel a little bit and how it affects the region's wine, to also understand the soil types in the Mosel, and of course to describe and taste some of the most common styles and grape varieties from the Mosel Valley. We're going to start off with geography and climate, okay? The first thing I did was I made this video in Google Earth, which has Germany and is highlighted on Koblenz, which is a town right at the end of the Mosel where the Mosel joins the Rhine River, okay? This is about the 50th parallel, if you know your latitude and longitude, which is traditionally considered to be the northern limit for fine wine production, okay? To give you a sense of scale, I brought that all the way over to North America, which most of us are a little more familiar with the wine growing areas. This is just north of Vancouver, about 1,000 miles north of Napa Valley. So that should give you a sense of really how far north we're talking about and how cold a climate it can be. So I've got 2 more maps here. Of course, Germany is on the left. This is a map of Germany as a whole with the 13 major regions, and Baugebiet as they call them. And you can see the Mosel right over here on the western border. And then on the right we have a detailed map of the Mosel Valley itself. Now the Mosel starts in the Vosges Mountains in Alsace in France and flows into the Rhine, as I mentioned, near Koblenz. There are also several sub-regions in the Mosel, okay? Here we go. The region was formerly called, as the whole title, Mosel Saar Ruwer. That's because of the two tributaries, the Saar and the Ruwer rivers, that flow into the Mosel. These are now considered subregions, along with three other subregions that lie on the Mosel River itself. The Ober Mosel, or Upper Mosel, which is the furthest upriver, the Terrassen Mosel, which lies near Koblenz, where it flows into the Rhine, and in the middle, the somewhat uncreatively named Middle Mosel. Okay? This actually does contain some of the best vineyards in the region, and the most famous vineyards in all of Germany. So here I wanted to talk a little bit about climate. Everybody knows climate's very important when it comes to wine growing, right? So I put a few different things in here. You can see in the bottom left, mean July temperature and annual rainfall. The Mosel is almost 10 degrees cooler on average than Napa Valley, and about 12 inches less rainfall per year, okay? What I really think is interesting though is the sunshine. And so this is a graph of sun hours per month in Koblenz, in Napa, and in Bordeaux. And if you look, Koblenz, or the Mosel Valley, sees as much as 100 fewer sun hours per month, even in the summer. You can imagine how that can make it difficult to ripen grapes. As you probably know, grapevines work by transferring sunlight into sugar in the grapes. So it needs sunlight to ripen the grapes. So this is a picture of the Mosel River. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why it is based on a river. It's no accident that many wine regions this far north follow rivers or other bodies of water. And that's because at first, when the Romans brought the vines into Germany, these rivers acted as their highways. Okay, this is how they carried their people, their supplies, and of course their wine. So it made sense to plant the vineyards close by. As the centuries unfurled though, it became clear that these hillsides near the river were much better at growing wine for other reasons as well. The water in the river itself does a couple of things for this. First of all, it reflects sunlight off of the river and onto these steep hillsides where the vineyards are planted. In a region that is suffering from a lack of sunlight, even this little bit of extra energy from the sun really benefits the vines. The water also acts as a temperature regulator. Water is slower to heat and cool than land, and so when a cold snap comes through, the water can regulate the temperature just enough to prevent frost from damaging the vines. So the other thing that the river does is it's carved these very steep hillsides. The Mosel has some of the steepest sloped vineyards in the world, sometimes in excess of 45 degrees. Okay? This does a couple of things. First of all, it allows for good drainage of the vines. I don't know if you know, but grapevines really hate having soggy roots. They thrive and produce the best wines when they have good drainage. But also, the hillside helps amplify the effect of the sunlight, and it helps these vines attract more sunlight or use the energy better. I'll show you how. So I created this illustration to help you understand a little bit about the concept of aspect. Okay? Aspect is basically how the sun strikes a particular vineyard. Now, we mentioned how far north the Mosel is, right? And in a region this far north, the sun never actually gets directly overhead. In fact, even in the summer, the maximum degree of solar elevation is 62 degrees. So it's always just slightly to the south. Now, the sun's rays are most effective when they're striking at 90 degrees. So just like a solar panel on a pitched roof collects more energy from the sun, so does the southern-facing slopes in the Mosel. You can see how this would mean that site selection for particular vineyards is incredibly important in this region. And if we look at this zoomed-in map of the Mosel, and this is particularly the middle Mosel area, we can see how the river meanders back and forth and creates lots of unique south-facing slopes, horseshoe shapes, amphitheaters, lots of opportunities for what we call mesoclimates. We'll take a look at a couple. Right near the town of Erzig, if you can see this, is a really nice south-facing slope, and that's the Erziger Würzgarten vineyard, known for a spicy aroma in the wines. That's what Würzgarten means. And then right down here, we have the town of Piesport, and you might be able to see this little horseshoe shape, almost 180-degree bend in the river. And right on the north side of the river there is the famous Piesporter Goldtropfen vineyard, an excellent vineyard. And I've got a little satellite imagery here to show you. You can see this large flat area here, and then the hillside on the north side of the river here is the Goldtropfen vineyard. You can see how it would be excellent at collecting the sunlight, and the hillsides around it protect it from cool winds. Alright, so next we're going to talk about soil composition. Okay? Soil is obviously important in a lot of wine growing regions. You've probably heard about it in different areas, and the Mosel is no different. So just like other river valleys, in the Mosel you're going to find different soils based on where you are in the river. Okay? So in the Terrassen Mosel area, where you have where the Mosel meets the Rhine, we're going to find more fine sandstone and clay, fine particles, right? In the middle Mosel, on the hillsides, you're going to find slate, both blue and red varieties of slate, and gravel in the flatter areas. In the Ober Mosel, closest to France, you're actually going to find more chalk and limestone, similar to you might find in Chablis or Champagne. So those are all important, but when you talk about the Mosel, we're talking about slate. 50% of the best vineyards are on slate soils, and it's what really gives the region its identity. Okay? So what is slate? Slate's metamorphic rock. It's formed from silt that's been compressed over millions of years under very intense pressure as tectonic plates shift. So it also has some really wonderful benefits when it comes to growing wine grapes. First of all, we already mentioned how drainage is important for good wine growing. Slate has excellent drainage, both because of the cracks formed in the rocks themselves, water can flow through it, but also because of the steep hillsides, the water can flow easily into the river. Those cracks in the rock also allow the roots to get very deep into the soil, and what that does is, we mentioned there's a lack of significant rainfall in the Mosel, so it allows the grapevines to access a more steady and consistent supply of water. The stones also do a different thing. The slate helps retain heat in the vineyard. You can imagine this black or blue colored slate sitting in the hot sun all day, collects a lot of energy, and it stores it, and then when it starts to cool off at night, or if a sudden cold snap comes through, it releases it back into the vineyard, moderating the temperature. Alright, so now we're going to move into grapes and styles of wine. As you might imagine, there's really one major important grape in the Mosel, and it is the Riesling grape. It's the top grape in Germany, and it's by far and away the top grape in the Mosel. It's 61% of planted acreage. There's some Müller-Thurgau, and about 9% of the plantings are red grapes, but all of the best wines that come from the Mosel come from Riesling. Now, when we talk about German wine styles and styles of wine in the Mosel, we have to explain a little bit about the German wine classification system. So it's somewhat similar to the French system in that as you get to a smaller area from which the grapes are grown, you generally see quality improve. So there is some Deutscher Wein, which can come from anywhere in Germany, or some Landwein, which comes from large regions. What we mostly see in the US is either Qualitätswein, which is good quality wine, can be dry or sweet, and it comes from one of those 13 Anbaugebiet regions, including the Mosel. Also, we see what's called Prädikatswein. This is wine of a higher quality. There's higher standards for production, including a ban on chaptalization, which is where they add sugar before fermentation. And there are several different levels of Prädikat. Has anyone here seen these before? Are you familiar with them at all? Okay, you are. Can you tell me what it basically corresponds to?
Well, the weight.
Yeah.
It's the weight of the must and the amount of residual sugar.
Exactly. So, while we find most consumers associate this with the wines being sweeter as you get down the list of Prädikat levels, what it actually means is must weight, or a concentration of sugars in the unfermented grape juice. Okay? Now, typically that does correspond to sweeter wine, but not always. Cabinet level wines are light and fresh. Spätlese and Auslese wines can be dry or sweet, and Beerenauslese and Trocken Beerenauslese wines are very sweet. Alright, now I want to talk a little bit about some other Mosel wine styles, one being ice wine. Has anyone here ever had ice wine? Yeah, it's great, right? This is a really cool style of wine where they harvest and press the grapes while they're actually frozen solid after the first freeze of the year. And what this does is it captures most of the water that's in the grape and makes the resulting juice that flows out of the press very concentrated. It makes intense, pure flavored wines that are very sweet. Alright, another style is Grosses Gewächs. This comes from the best vineyard sites in Germany and is always dry. And Another style that I really love, and you don't see that commonly in the U.S., is a Trocken Auslese style. This comes from Auslese level grapes, so very ripe grapes, but fermented to complete dryness. So what you get is wine that's very high acid, very intense and mineral driven, and high alcohol too. These wines are elegant, powerful, and can be very long lived. So a few other ones, you might see the word Halbtrocken. That literally just means off dry. You usually see it more on a Qualitätswein. And then Gold Capsule, which is literally a gold colored foil capsule on the bottle. And it usually just signifies that the producer thinks this is a better quality wine, maybe a sweeter wine, or maybe from a special lot within the vineyard. Okay? So, now we're moving on to the tasting. I'll tell you a little bit about each of the wines we're tasting. First, we have the Dr. Lucen Öse Gewürzgarten Grosses Gewächs 2014 Riesling. This is an excellent wine, comes from one of the best vineyards in Germany. It's going to be very dry, very high acid, very crisp, right? And you should get a lot of minerality on the nose. And then see if you can also get some of the spice notes that they named the vineyard for, right? Grosses Gewächs wines are very highly prized in Germany, and kind of at this point are what a lot of modern German winemakers make their best wines as dry Grosses Gewächs Rieslings. By the way, these vines from this vineyard are over 100 years old on original rootstock, which is something really cool. The next wine is a cabinet level wine. This is from the Piesporter Goldtropfen vineyard, and this is from Reinhold Hart, which is one of the best known producers in that region. So cabinet level wines, I mentioned, will be light and fresh and fruity. Pairs really well with a lot of different, spicier foods, Thai foods work really well with it. But really good quality wine, really pure fruit flavors. You might also notice it tastes a bit sweeter than the Grosses Gewächs wine, right? But you probably would be shocked to hear that this wine actually has 63 grams per liter of residual sugar in it. It's a lot. But it doesn't taste like that because the acidity of the Riesling grape is so high, it balances it perfectly. That's what I mean when I talk about harmony and balance in these wines. The last wine you're going to taste is a dessert wine. This is an Auslese level Riesling from Studert Prum, and this is from the Wählener Sonnener vineyard in the Mosel. Okay? So this is going to be a lot more rich, intense wines. You're going to find some really luscious like stone and tropical fruit flavors and a much fuller bodied texture on the wine as well. This is going to be great for pairing with like fruit-based desserts, as well as you can do a contrasting pairing with like a foie gras dish or something rich like that. Okay? So that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate you guys letting me come in and present to you guys and kind of share my passion for this region for you. I'll leave you on this word that these really are some of the best white wines in the world, and for you guys as wine professionals, you're kind of the front lines to help spread the gospel about how good these wines are and share these with consumers wherever you can. Great, thanks. And appreciate it. Any questions you guys have? Yeah.
The Gross Gewächs, is that what you call it?
Yes.
Something like that?
Grosses Gewächs.
Okay, that's very nice. That's very similar to Grand Cru level in Burgundy, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the inspiration for it. It was developed by the VDP, which is a growers association, where the growers themselves actually selected the best sites in each region and sub-region and identified them as Erste Lage, which is like the top growth. The Grosses Gewächs are wines from those top sites, but always dry wines. Yeah. Anybody else? Did you guys enjoy the wines? Yeah? It's good stuff. Okay. Great. Well, thanks so much. Yeah. If you haven't got a chance to taste through them all yet, we'll move them around, and thanks again. Thank you.